Welcome to Monk's Moon Temple. Let us begin this journey not with an analysis of a problem, but with the simple, gentle acknowledgement of a feeling. It is a quiet space within, a hollow echo that seems to resonate when the world grows still. You may know this as loneliness. Tonight, we will not treat it as an enemy to be vanquished. Instead, we will invite it in, sit with it, and through the timeless wisdom of Buddhism, learn to see it not as an ending, but as a profound and spacious beginning. The first truth we must gently unravel is the source of our own happiness. We live in a world that teaches us joy is a reaction. It is the smile returned, the message received, the presence of another in our room. We become like beautiful instruments, believing our music can only be played by another's hands. When the hands withdraw, we sit in silence and call it loneliness. But what if the music was not in the hands, but in the very strings and wood of the instrument itself? What if the silence was not empty, but the necessary pause that allows us to hear our own resonance? The Buddha's profound teaching on solitude directs us to this inner resonance. Let me share a story, a modern parable. There was a lighthouse keeper who lived for decades on a tiny, rugged island. His purpose was the great beam that swept across the dark sea, his connection to brief radio check-ins with the mainland and the occasional supply boat. He loved his work, defined by this rhythm of solitary vigilance and punctuated contact. Then, the lighthouse was automated. A machine took over the beam. The radio fell silent. He was relocated to a small apartment in a bustling city. Surrounded by thousands, he felt a loneliness more vast and crushing than any ocean. The noise was a constant assault, yet it felt emptier than the deepest silence of his island. One day, overwhelmed, he bought a simple, powerful flashlight. That night, in his dark apartment, he sat by the window and turned it on, sweeping its beam slowly across the walls and ceiling. In that simple, solitary act, he remembered. He was not the lighthouse, he was the keeper. The light was not the giant tower's beam, it was his own attentive awareness. His profound loneliness began to melt, not because people appeared, but because he had rediscovered his own capacity to hold the light, to be the watcher in his own night. He began to use his solitude to keep watch on his own mind, his own breath. The city outside became his new sea, and he, in his quiet apartment, was once again the steadfast keeper, his inner light his constant beam. If this idea of finding your own inner light speaks to you, I welcome you to subscribe to Monk's Moon Temple. By joining, you plant a seed in a garden of shared understanding, helping this sanctuary of calm to grow and offer refuge whenever you need to remember your own light. This is the radical shift Buddhism offers, a transfer of authority. We so often appoint other people, situations, and possessions as the ministers of our inner state. When they are in session, all is well. When they adjourn, we feel a constitutional crisis within. The Buddha's wisdom invites us to a peaceful inner revolution. It asks us to reclaim our own sovereignty, to become the stable, compassionate ruler of our own heartland. Loneliness is the feeling of a government in exile. Solitude is the peaceful return home. Consider a new metaphor. Imagine your mind is a deep, clear lake. When people are around, they are like the wind. Their kindness creates pleasant ripples of joy. Their laughter creates small, happy waves. We come to love the dance of the water's surface. Then, the wind stops. The lake becomes still, mirror flat. We look at this stillness and mistake it for emptiness, for deadness. We cry, I am lonely. We wait desperately for the next wind to stir us. But the practice of solitude is the act of looking down into the depths of the still lake. It is there, in the profound quiet below the surface, that we see the ancient stones, the swaying plants, the hidden life. We discover the lake is not its surface, it is its entire, deep, self-contained ecosystem. The stillness is not a lack of wind, it is the condition that reveals the lake's true, majestic depth. Your peace is not in the ripples. It is in the depths that exist whether the wind blows or not. This is not a teaching against relationship. After his enlightenment, the Buddha spent a lifetime teaching, forming a community, engaging with kings and paupers. Connection is a beautiful flower in the garden of human experience. But the root of the plant, the source of its life, must be in your own soil. If the flower depends on water from another's garden, it will wilt the moment their attention turns away. The practice of solitude is the deep, patient work of tending your own soil, sinking your own roots, so you can bloom with or without the rain from another's cloud. I remember a period in my own training, noble silence, that lasted for 10 days. The initial loneliness was a physical hunger, a craving for the nourishment of a voice, a glance, a shared smile. My mind became a theater showing marathon reruns of past conversations and fantasies of future ones. It was exhausting. The breakthrough came not when the loneliness left, but when I stopped asking it to leave. I simply sat with the raw sensation of it, as if observing a strange, shy animal. I stopped telling the story, I am lonely and that is bad. I just felt the tightness in the chest, the hollow feeling. And in that direct, wordless feeling, a space opened. The I that was lonely seemed to step back, and there was just the sensation, floating in awareness. And awareness itself was vast, peaceful, and curiously interested. It was like the sky realizing it can hold a storm cloud without being the storm. From that day, loneliness lost its terrifying power. It became a weather pattern in the sky of my mind, and I began to know myself as the sky. This is the heart of the practice, to differentiate the content of experience from the awareness that holds it. Loneliness is content. Your aware presence is the container. The container is always larger, always undisturbed. Our work is to identify with the container, not the temporary, passing content. Let's pause and feel this directly. Wherever you are, let your body be supported. Close your eyes if you wish. Bring your attention to your hands. Feel the aliveness there, the subtle tingling, the temperature, the pulse. For just this moment, let your entire world be the felt experience of your hands. There is no past, no future, no other person. Just this field of sensation. This is a direct experience of your own conscious presence, independent of anyone else's. This awareness, this simple knowing of sensation, is your fundamental nature. It is never lonely. It is simply awake. Rest here for a few breaths, anchored in the awake presence that is reading these words, feeling these sensations. This is your ground of being. This is where solitude lives. Let us continue. Having touched that ground of awake presence, we can explore the landscape that appears upon it. Often, what we call loneliness is not a pure feeling, but a story. It is a narrative spun by the mind in the absence of external input. I am alone. No one understands me. I am disconnected. These are thoughts, words. The practice Buddhism teaches is to gently set the story aside and meet the raw, wordless energy beneath it. This is where transformation begins. I will tell you a story about a weaver. This weaver was famous for creating magnificent tapestries that told epic tales of heroes and lovers, battles and reunions. People would come from far and wide to see her work, and the buzz of their admiration was the music of her life. One day, a great storm flooded her studio, ruining her looms and washing away all her dyes except for one small pot of deep, indigo blue. Devastated and, for the first time, utterly alone without her craft or her audience, she fell into a deep silence. For weeks, she did nothing. Then, one morning, she took her last loom, strung it with plain thread, and began to weave with only the indigo dye. Without a story to tell, she simply wove. She explored the texture of the thread, the rhythm of the shuttle, the subtle variations in shade that appeared from the single dye. What emerged was not a tale of external drama, but a profound exploration of depth, shadow, and light itself. It was a tapestry of blue so deep viewers felt they were looking into a night sky or a calm sea. In her forced solitude, stripped of her grand narratives, she discovered a more essential language, the language of pure presence and depth. Her loneliness was the storm that washed away the complicated stories. Her solitude was the quiet space where she learned to speak a simpler, more universal truth. This is what we are invited to do. When the stories of loneliness arise, I have no one, I am missing out, I am unloved, we can acknowledge them as thoughts, and then, like the weaver, turn our attention to the underlying fabric of our present moment experience. What is the sensation in the body? What is the quality of the breath? What sounds are actually here, right now? This is weaving with the indigo of direct experience. The Buddha's path is one of exquisite attention. It redirects the spotlight of our consciousness from the dramatic play of external events to the quiet stage of our inner world. In that inner world, we discover we are never truly poor. We possess a wealth of sensations, feelings, thoughts, and awareness that is endlessly fascinating and constantly changing. To feel lonely is to have forgotten the immense, bustling city that exists within your own being. Solitude is the decision to become a friendly wanderer in that inner city, exploring its quiet alleyways and spacious plazas with curiosity. Consider another metaphor. Think of yourself as a tree in a grove. For a long time, you have measured your well-being by the rustling conversations with the trees next to you, by the touch of their leaves in the wind. When they are cut down or when the wind stills, you feel a terrible isolation. I am the only tree left, you think. But the practice of solitude is the discovery of your own roots. You begin to feel them stretching deep into the earth, drawing nourishment from a source that is not dependent on any other tree. You feel your own trunk, solid and resilient. You notice the sun warming your own leaves. You realize your connection to the earth and the sky is a direct relationship, unmediated by the grove. Your aliveness is your own. And from this place of rooted independence, you can appreciate other trees without needing them for your survival. Your sense of connection becomes one of appreciation, not desperation. This is a subtle but profound shift from need-based relationship to appreciation-based coexistence. It is the foundation of all healthy connection. I recall a man who came to the temple, a once successful businessman whose identity was his company, his network, his deals. Retirement left him feeling like a ghost, visible to no one, including himself. He described a loneliness that was a vacuum. We started with a simple practice. Each morning, he was to light a single candle and sit with it for 5 minutes. No praying, no thinking. just watching the flame. The first week, he said it was agony. The silence screamed. But he persisted. Then, one morning, he reported something shifted. He wasn't just watching the candle, he felt a strange kinship with it. It is alone, too, he said. But it doesn't seem to mind. It just does what it does, burns, gives light, flickers in drafts. In seeing the candle's serene solitude, he began to see the possibility of his own. He started to ask, what is my equivalent of just burning? Of giving my light, regardless of who is in the room to see it. His exploration led him to volunteer, not to fill time, but as an expression of his inner flame. His loneliness had been the smoke from a dampened fire. Solitude was the process of clearing the air so his own flame could burn cleanly and brightly again. This is a powerful aspect of the teaching. Loneliness often feels heavy, damp, and inert. Solitude, when embraced, has a quality of lightness, clarity, and potential energy. It is the space where our intrinsic nature can express itself without obstruction. The Buddha did not praise solitude because he disliked people. He pointed to it because it is the only place where we can meet ourselves free of projection and role-playing. It is the laboratory of self-knowledge. In the company of others, we are always, to some degree, performing. In solitude, the performance ends. We meet the raw materials of our being. This can be unsettling at first. Hence the fear of loneliness. But with a compassionate and curious attitude, it becomes the most liberating encounter of all. Let's try a short exploration. For a moment, drop any idea of who you are supposed to be, your job, your roles, your relationships. Let those labels soften and drift away. Now, ask inwardly, what is here when there is no label? Don't search for a philosophical answer. Feel for a direct experience. You might sense a field of awareness, a presence, a simple beingness. This is not lonely you. This is the fundamental you, before any story is added. This aware space is your true home. It is always solitary, in the most peaceful sense, because it is uniquely yours, yet it is also completely connected to the source of awareness itself. Rest in this recognition for a few breaths. This is the sanctuary you carry within you at all times. From this sanctuary, we can look at the comings and goings of people in our lives with a new equanimity. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent. Relationships are conditioned things. They form, they change, they end. If we build our house on the ground of relationship, we will be homeless many times in our life. But if we build our house on the ground of our own aware presence, on the practice of solitude, then we have a permanent home. People can visit, and we can welcome them warmly. They can leave, and we remain, at home. This is true emotional independence, which is the precondition for true interdependence. We cling to others often out of a fear of this inner emptiness. But what if the emptiness is not a void to be feared, but a womb of potential to be cherished? What if the empty page is not a sign of writer's block, but an invitation to write a new, authentic story? Let's continue by examining this empty page more closely. In our world, emptiness is so often feared. An empty room, an empty schedule, an empty heart, these are states we rush to fill. We confuse emptiness with poverty. But in the deeper currents of Buddhist wisdom, emptiness holds a different meaning. It is not a lack, but a potential. It is not a void, but a space, the very space that allows for movement, for creation, for peace. Your feeling of loneliness holds at its center this kind of empty space. The work is not to clutter it with distraction, but to first be brave enough to sit in its center, and then wise enough to see what it truly is. I will share a story about a musician. He was a master of the flute, his life dedicated to crafting melodies that wove through the air, captivating all who heard. His happiness was the note, the song, the applause. Then, an illness damaged his lungs. He could no longer play. The music was gone. The silence that replaced it was deafening, a loneliness he felt was a living death. In his despair, he took his finest flute into the forest. Unable to blow, he simply held it, running his fingers over the holes. A breeze passed through the trees, and by chance, it passed through the flute in his hands. A single, haunting, perfect note sounded, clear, beautiful, and utterly spontaneous. He was stunned. He had not created it. He had simply held the space, the empty cylinder of the flute. And the world had breathed the music through him. From that day, he would go to the forest, hold his flute, and wait. He became a listener, a vessel. The wind, his breath, the world itself became the musician. His loneliness, the silence where his own music had been, transformed into a profound solitude where he could hear the universe's song. He discovered that his true artistry was not in filling the silence, but in becoming a hollow space through which beauty could freely move. This is a profound teaching on our own nature. We often believe we must be the player, the creator, the one who fills our life with sound and activity. When we can't, we feel useless and alone. But Buddhism guides us to also appreciate the part of us that is the flute, the open, receptive, empty space that allows life to resonate through us. Your solitude is that hollow space. It is not a deficit of life, it is the very instrument through which the music of existence can be heard most clearly. The Buddha's teachings consistently point us from the outer form to the inner space that contains it. We focus on the clay pot, not the emptiness inside that gives it utility. We focus on the window frame, not the open space that allows in the light. We focus on the people in our lives, not the aware presence within us that knows those people. Loneliness is an obsession with the missing pot, the shuttered window, the absent person. Solitude is a resting in the utility of the empty space, the openness that is ready for light, the aware presence that is our fundamental nature. Let me offer another metaphor. Imagine consciousness as a vast, clear screen at a cinema. The movies that play upon it, the dramas, comedies, thrillers of our relationships and experiences, are captivating. We laugh, we cry, we get lost in the stories. When a particularly beloved movie ends and the screen goes blank, we might feel a sense of loss. It's over. It's empty. I'm alone. This is loneliness, the grief for the finished story. But solitude is the remembrance, I am not the movie. I am the screen. The screen is always present, silent, untouched by the dramas that play upon it. It is never lonely. It simply is, providing the space for all experience. Your practice is to shift your identity from the temporary movie to the permanent, peaceful screen. This shift in identity is the core of the path. It is what the Buddha awakened to. He was no longer a person buffeted by pleasure and pain, gain and loss, companionship and loneliness. He was the unconditioned awareness in which all those conditioned experiences arose and passed away. This is the ultimate solitude, and it is a state of unshakable peace. I remember a woman, a mother whose children had just left for university. Her home, once the vibrant hub of chaos and love, was now neat, quiet, and to her, horrifyingly empty. The loneliness was a physical weight on her chest. She tried to busy herself, but the activities felt meaningless. On a friend's suggestion, she came to a weekend retreat at the temple. The first evening, during a walking meditation, she was instructed to simply feel her feet touching the earth, over and over. At first, her mind was a torrent of memories and worries. But the simple, repetitive physical sensation began to ground her. She later said, "I realized I had spent 20 years feeling everyone else's feet, where they were going, what they needed. I had forgotten what my own feet felt like on the ground." That simple, solitary act of feeling her own contact with the earth became a revelation. Her loneliness had been a form of disembodiment, a psychic hovering over an empty house. Solitude began with the reclaiming of her own physical presence, one step at a time. She began to garden, not to make the yard pretty, but to feel her hands in the soil, to have a relationship with the earth that was direct, simple, and hers alone. This is so often the entry point, the body, the breath, the senses. When we are lonely, we are almost always, in our head, lost in thoughts about the past or future where others exist or are absent. Solitude is found by dropping down out of the thinking mind and into the feeling body, into the present moment where life is actually happening. The present moment is never lonely. It is always vibrantly, impersonally alive. Let's practice this now. Take 3 deep, slow breaths. Then, allow your breath to return to its natural rhythm. Now, bring 100% of your attention to the very tips of your fingers. Feel the aliveness there. Feel the air maybe touching them. Feel the subtle pulse of energy. For 1 minute, let your universe be no larger than the sensations in your fingertips. If thoughts about loneliness or anything else arise, gently, without judgment, return your attention to the fingertips. You are not doing this to achieve anything. You are doing it to be somewhere, here, in the direct experience of your aliveness. This is a radical act of solitary communion. You are keeping company with your own life force. This is the practice that dismantles loneliness from the inside out. It builds a relationship with yourself that is based on direct experience, not on thought. You are building a friendship with the awareness that reads these words, feels these sensations. This friend never leaves. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from craving and aversion. Loneliness is a potent mix of both, craving for companionship and aversion to being alone. The path to the end of that suffering is not to finally get the perfect companion who never leaves. It is to end the craving and aversion around being alone. It is to see the state of being alone, solitude, with wisdom, to see its inherent advantages, its peace, its potential for deep insight. When we truly see that, the craving and aversion fall away. What remains is not a barren state, but a rich, fertile field of inner freedom. From this field, our engagement with the world is transformed. We no longer approach others from a place of need, hoping they will complete us. We approach from a place of wholeness, offering the overflow of our own contentment. This is the basis for love without clinging, for companionship without dependency. It is the only foundation for relationships that are truly free. Let's continue our exploration into this fertile field of inner freedom. We've spoken of shifting identity from the movie to the screen, from the flute's player to the flute itself. This is the heart of the Buddhist path, a profound reorientation from what is temporary and conditional to what is timeless and unconditional. When we anchor ourselves in the unconditional, the comings and goings of the conditional world, including people, can no longer devastate us. They become like weather moving across a deep, still sky. I will tell you a story about a master calligrapher. He was renowned for his perfect characters, his brushstrokes embodying centuries of tradition. Students flocked to him, and his studio was a hive of quiet activity. His sense of self was intertwined with his skill and his role as a teacher. Then, a tremor developed in his hand. The steady line became a shaky scrawl. His students, one by one, drifted away to other masters. The studio fell silent. He was left alone with his trembling hand, and what he felt was the ruins of his life. The loneliness was a bitter taste. In his despair, he stopped trying to write traditional characters. He simply sat, placed a large sheet of paper on the floor, dipped his brush, and let his trembling hand move as it would. No goal, no perfect form. At first, it was just chaotic lines. But as he continued this daily, solitary practice, something changed. He began to see a wild, liberated beauty in the spontaneous marks. The tremor was no longer a flaw, it was a unique signature of the moment, of his life force expressing itself honestly, free from the constraints of form. His solitary practice birthed a new, celebrated art form. His deepest loneliness, the loss of his old identity and community, had forced him into a solitude where he discovered his most authentic, unmediated expression. He wasn't a calligrapher anymore, he was simply life, moving a brush. This story illuminates a crucial point. Often, loneliness strikes hardest when we lose a role or an identity that was dependent on others, the parent, the partner, the leader, the expert. We feel we have lost ourselves. But what has been lost is only a costume. The practice of solitude invites us to sit in the dressing room after the costume has been removed, and to have the courage to ask, who is here now? Not the role, but the being who wore it. This essential being, your true nature, is not dependent on any audience or co-star. The Buddha's wisdom directs us to this essential being. It is called by many names: awareness, original mind, Buddha nature. It is the silent witness behind all your thoughts and feelings, including loneliness. It is like the open sky. Loneliness is a dark, passing cloud. If you identify with the cloud, your world becomes dark and heavy. If you remember you are the sky, you can watch the cloud with curiosity, knowing it is temporary and does not affect the vast, blue nature of the sky itself. Your practice is the gentle, persistent remembrance: I am not the cloud of loneliness. I am the sky that holds it. Let's explore another metaphor. Consider a mountain lake, fed by a deep, underground spring. On its surface, it reflects the surrounding trees, the birds that fly over, the people who visit its shore. The lake might think, my beauty and vitality come from these reflections and visitors. If the trees are cut down and the visitors stop coming, the lake feels barren and ugly. This is loneliness. But the spring beneath continues to feed it with fresh, clear water. The practice of solitude is the process of diving below the reflective surface to discover this inner spring. You find that your vitality, your clarity, your essential nourishment comes from within, not from the reflections of others on your surface. From the security of knowing your spring, you can enjoy the reflections when they come, but you are no longer devastated by their absence. I recall a time in my own journey, a period of intense isolation during a long retreat winter. A blizzard had closed the roads for weeks. The small community was separated into individual cabins. The initial feeling was not of peaceful solitude, but of stark, frightening loneliness. It felt like being stranded on an ice floe. One evening, out of sheer mental exhaustion, I stopped reading, stopped meditating with any goal, and just sat by the small wood stove, watching the flames. Hour after hour, I simply watched. I wasn't practicing anything. I was just being with the fire. In that utterly simple, solitary engagement, a deep warmth arose that had nothing to do with the stove. It was a warmth of pure, undemanding presence. The ice flow of loneliness melted into an ocean of quiet belonging, not belonging to a group, but belonging to the moment itself, to the crackle of the fire, to the howl of the wind, to the simple fact of being alive and aware. I realized loneliness had been a story of separation, but the direct experience was one of intimate participation in the unfolding of life, even in its most solitary form. This is a key insight. The story of loneliness says, I am separate, cut off. The direct experience of solitude, when met with bare attention, can reveal the opposite, a profound intimacy with existence itself. You are not separate from the air you breathe, the ground beneath you, the flow of sensations in your body. You are embedded in life. The feeling of separation is a thought, not an ultimate reality. Let's cultivate this intimacy now. Feel the air as it enters your nostrils. Cool. As it leaves your nostrils. Warm. You are in a continuous, intimate exchange with the atmosphere of the planet. You are not alone, you are in a constant, silent dialogue with the air. Now, feel the pressure of your body against the chair or floor. That is the earth, supporting you, holding you up. This is not a metaphor. It is a physical fact. You are in a constant, intimate embrace with the earth. In this very moment, can you truly say you are alone? Or are you in a deep, wordless relationship with the elements that compose and sustain you? This is the foundation of solitude, realizing you are in relationship with everything, beginning with your own breath and body. When we build our sense of connection on this fundamental, non-personal relationship with life, we become unshakable. People add beautiful colors and melodies to this foundational experience, but they are no longer its pillars. If they go, the foundation remains, solid and complete. The Buddha taught the middle way between the extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification. In the context of loneliness, the middle way is the path between clinging to others and rejecting them. It is the balanced abiding in your own solitude, which allows you to welcome others without need and to release them without bitterness. Your inner well-being is not swinging on a pendulum between these extremes, it is resting in the still, central point, the point of serene solitude. From this center, your entire life becomes an expression of inner abundance rather than a search for outer fulfillment. Your actions become generous, your presence becomes calming, because you are not trying to take anything from anyone. You are sharing from your overflow. Let's continue from this still, central point. We've established that solitude is not a barren state of lack, but a fertile ground of connection with life itself. Now, we must address a subtle, powerful force that keeps us trapped in the feeling of loneliness, the habit of seeking ourselves in the mirror of other people's eyes. We believe we are the reflection we see there. When the mirror is empty, we think we have disappeared. Buddhism asks us to turn away from all mirrors and to feel the substance of our own face with our own hands. I will share a story about a village built around a clear, still pond. For generations, the villagers believed this pond was magical because it gave each person a perfect, beautiful reflection. They would spend hours gazing at their own image, finding their worth, their identity, in the water's glassy surface. Their entire culture was based on this daily ritual of reflection. Then, a great drought came. Day by day, the pond shrank. Panic set in. Who were they without their reflection? As the last puddle evaporated under the sun, they were thrown into a despair they called the Great Loneliness. They had to face each other, and themselves, without the mediating, beautifying mirror. At first, it was agonizing. But slowly, out of necessity, they began to actually look at each other's faces directly, to listen to each other's voices, to touch each other's hands. They began to feel the sun on their own skin, the wind in their own hair, without checking how it looked in the water. They discovered a reality more vivid, more textured, and more real than any reflection. Their loneliness, the loss of the mirror, forced them into the solitary, unmediated experience of their own direct senses. In doing so, they found a community and a selfhood infinitely deeper than the flat, silent images they had worshipped. They found the courage to be, not just to appear. This is our habitual trap. We are constantly checking our reflection in the opinions, attention, and presence of others. Do they like me? Do they need me? Am I seen? When that reflection is absent, we feel we cease to exist. The practice of solitude is the brave act of letting the pond dry up, of withdrawing our obsessive gaze from external mirrors, and learning to know ourselves through direct inner feeling. Who are you when no one is looking? Not in a performative sense, but in the raw, authentic sense of your own conscious presence. The Buddha's teaching on Anatta, or not self, is often misunderstood. It does not mean you don't exist. It means the you think you are. The one defined by its reflection in relationships, achievements, and thoughts, is a fragile, dependent construct. The true you is the aware space in which this construct appears. It is not dependent on any mirror. Finding this true you is the ultimate purpose of solitude. Consider a new metaphor. Imagine you are a source of light. In company, your light mingles with the light of others, creating a bright, blended glow. It's beautiful. You come to believe your light only has value when it is part of this blending. When you are alone, you see only your single beam and think, my light is weak. It is insignificant compared to the blended glow. This is loneliness. But solitude is the discovery that your single beam has its own unique color, its own purity, its own power to illuminate darkness in a way that blended light cannot. Your solitary light can reach into corners that group light never touches. It can be a focused guide, a steady beacon. Its value is not in comparison, but in its own intrinsic nature. The practice is to learn to appreciate the quality of your own pure, undiluted light. I remember a man, a writer, who was acclaimed for his collaborations. His best work was done in dynamic partnership, the energy of another mind sparking his own. When his longtime collaborator moved across the world, he felt not just sad, but creatively paralyzed. The page was terrifyingly blank. His loneliness was a writer's block of the soul. He stopped trying to write for publication. Instead, he began to keep a journal with a rule: no one would ever read it. He wrote nonsense, fragments, childish complaints, beautiful descriptions of dust motes in a sunbeam. He wrote without an audience, for the first time since he was a boy. In that absolute, solitary freedom, his voice changed. It became stranger, truer, more his own. The loneliness had been the silence of an echo chamber waiting for a sound to bounce back. The solitude became the space where his own original sound could finally be made. He later said that journal, written in total isolation, contained the seeds of his most authentic work. He had to lose the mirror of the collaborator to find his own writer's heart. This is a universal principle. We often need to be stripped of the external feedback loops to hear our own inner signal. Loneliness is the static that seems to appear when the familiar station goes off the air. Solitude is the patient tuning of the dial to find the quieter, clearer frequency that was always broadcasting, the frequency of your own being. Let's practice tuning in. For a moment, let go of all ideas of how you should be, what you should feel. Let there be no should. Now, silently ask your heart, what is true right now? Don't answer with words. Feel for an answer in the body. A tightness, a release, a warmth, a stillness. Simply acknowledge whatever sensation arises as the truthful communication of this moment. This is listening to your own signal, without translating it for an audience. This is the most intimate conversation you will ever have. This is solitude in action. When we cultivate this inner intimacy, we build a foundation of self-trust and self-knowledge that is unassailable. The Buddha said to be a lamp unto yourself, a refuge unto yourself. This is not a recommendation for selfishness. It is the ultimate instruction for security. You must find your own light, your own safe island within. No one else can give it to you or take it from you. When you have this, your relationships cease to be desperate attempts to find a lamp or an island in another person. They become the joyful sharing of light, the friendly visiting of each other's islands. This brings us to a beautiful paradox at the heart of Buddhist wisdom. The deeper you go into your own solitude, into your own unique, individual experience, the more you connect with the universal. In the depths of your specific pain of loneliness, you touch the universal human condition of impermanence and longing. In the depths of your specific peace in solitude, you touch the universal nature of awareness and stillness. By fully being yourself, alone, you become one with everything. The separate drop realizes it is the ocean. From this realization, compassion naturally flows. You understand the loneliness of others because you have fully known your own, not as a problem to be solved, but as a path to be walked. Your solitude makes you more compassionate, not less connected. Therefore, the feeling of loneliness is not a sign that you are failing at life or relationships. It is an invitation. An invitation to stop, to turn inward, to do the most important work of your life. The work of knowing who you are when all the roles are quiet, when all the mirrors are covered. It is an invitation to build your home in the timeless, to find your song in the silence, to become your own most faithful companion. This journey requires patience and kindness toward yourself. There will be times when the old habit of seeking the mirror feels overwhelming. In those moments, simply breathe. Feel the breath. You are here. You are alive. You are aware. That is enough. That is the foundation of everything. Let's go deeper into this invitation, this turning inward. Often, what we resist in loneliness is not just the absence of others, but the presence of ourselves, our unfiltered, unedited selves. We have become so accustomed to the external world defining the contours of our identity that to be left alone with the raw material of our own consciousness can feel daunting, like being in a workshop filled with unfamiliar tools. Buddhism doesn't just give us a comforting thought, it gives us a practice. It gives us the tools to work skillfully with that raw material, to craft a relationship with ourselves that is based on compassionate observation, not harsh judgment. I will tell you a story about a master woodcarver. He was famous for his statues of deities, each one intricate and serene, sent to temples far and wide. His workshop was filled with the sounds of chisels and the admiration of apprentices. One day, he received a rare, enormous block of sandalwood, perfect for a grand commission. But as he raised his chisel, his hand froze. A deep uncertainty gripped him. All his previous works felt like copies, interpretations of traditional forms. The sheer perfection of this blank block paralyzed him. He dismissed his apprentices, closed his workshop, and sat for days in the silent presence of the wood. At first, the silence was a heavy loneliness, the absence of purposeful sound. But as he sat, he began to notice the grain of the wood, its subtle scent, the way the light caught its ridges. He wasn't thinking of what to make. He was simply being with the wood. In that prolonged, solitary communion, a strange certainty arose. He picked up his tools not to impose a form, but to follow a form he felt was already sleeping within the wood. He worked slowly, in total solitude, for months. What emerged was not a traditional deity, but a profound expression of stillness itself, a figure that seemed to be both emerging from the wood and returning to it. It was his masterpiece, born not from a plan, but from a deep, solitary friendship with the material itself. His loneliness, the creative paralysis, was the necessary death of his old, external method. His solitude was the birth of a true inner vision. We are that block of wood. Our lives are often shaped by external expectations, the chisels of social norms, relationships, and roles. Loneliness can feel like the moment those external chisels stop. We sit, blank and paralyzed, wondering what to do with ourselves. The practice is to become like the carver in his solitary workshop. To sit with yourself, not to immediately carve a new you, but to simply be present with the raw material of your being. To notice the grain of your thoughts, the scent of your emotions, the texture of your silence. From that intimate, non-judgmental acquaintance, your authentic form, your true life, will begin to reveal itself. You stop carving the person you think you should be, and you start uncovering the being you are. The Buddha's path is one of uncovering, not acquiring. We are not building a new self to feel better. We are peeling away the layers of conditioning, the stories, the dependencies, to reveal the luminous, aware presence that was always there. Loneliness feels like a layer has been ripped away, exposing something vulnerable. Solitude is the gentle, compassionate space where we learn that what is exposed is not a wound, but our true skin. Let me offer another metaphor. Think of your mind as a pristine, high mountain lake. Over the years, boats of relationship, jobs of identity, and storms of emotion have crisscrossed its surface, stirring up silt from the bottom. The water becomes cloudy. We define ourselves by the traffic on the lake. When the traffic stops, when we are alone, the lake goes still. For a while, it remains cloudy, and this murky stillness can feel like loneliness, a stagnant, unattractive state. But if we have the patience to remain still, to not stir the water by desperately seeking new boats, the silt begins to settle. Slowly, the water clears. And in that profound clarity, we see all the way to the beautiful, rocky bottom. We see our own depths reflected in the still surface. We see the sky perfectly mirrored in our own clear mind. The loneliness was the murky water in transition. The solitude is the crystal clarity that results from patient stillness. I recall a period in my own life, after a significant chapter had closed. I had moved to a new city where I knew no one. The initial excitement gave way to a flat, pervasive loneliness. I filled my time with busyness, but it was like stirring the muddy lake. One rainy Sunday, with nowhere to go and no one to see, I finally stopped. I sat on the floor of my empty apartment and did nothing. I watched the rain on the window. I felt the emptiness of the rooms. And instead of fighting it, I let it be. I let the loneliness wash over me like the rain. And in the heart of that allowance, the I that was lonely seemed to recede, and there was just the sound of rain, the gray light, the feeling of the floor. The silt began to settle. In that clear, quiet space, a simple, powerful insight arose: this is it. This is life, too. Not good, not bad. Just this. The solid floor, the falling rain, the aware presence witnessing it. From that day, my relationship with being alone changed. It was no longer a state of lack to be avoided, but a state of being to be occasionally visited, like a clean, quiet room in the house of my life. This is the transformative alchemy, to stop resisting the feeling and to meet the bare sensation underneath the story. This is a form of meditation you can practice anywhere, anytime. When loneliness arises, don't go to the story. Go to the body. Where do you feel it? Is it a hollow sensation in the chest? A tightness in the throat? A heaviness in the shoulders? Place your gentle attention on that physical sensation. Breathe into it. Be curious about its texture, its edges, its weight. By doing this, you are moving from the mental narrative of loneliness, which is past and future-oriented, into the present moment reality of a bodily sensation. And the present moment is where freedom is always found. The Buddha taught mindfulness of feelings. Vedananyapasana. He instructed to know a feeling as a feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, without being swept away by it. Loneliness is an unpleasant feeling. The practice is to know it as, an unpleasant feeling is present, not as, I am a lonely person. This slight shift in perspective creates a world of space. It allows you to relate to the feeling instead of being the feeling. From this space, you gain choice. You are no longer a puppet jerked by the string of loneliness. You are the awareness that sees the string, and can, in time, choose not to be pulled. You can choose to use the quiet time to read, to walk, to create, to rest, to simply be. You can choose to see the solitude as a gift of time, or return to your own rhythm. This is not a passive state. It is a deeply engaged state of friendship with yourself. It is the opposite of the disengagement and numbness that often accompanies loneliness. Solitude is full engagement with the miracle of your own conscious existence. So, when you find yourself in that quiet space, see if you can greet it not with dread, but with a sense of curiosity. Ah, here I am. Just me. What is that like? You might be surprised at what you discover when you stop trying to escape and start trying to be present. Let's explore this sense of curiosity, this friendly engagement with our own solitude. We've moved from seeing loneliness as a problem to recognizing solitude as a practice. Now, we must address the fuel that feeds the fire of loneliness, the untamed mind that constantly compares, craves, and tells stories of lack. Buddhism provides not just a philosophy, but a practical toolkit for taming this mind. The central tool is mindfulness, the ability to place our attention where we choose, rather than having it dragged helplessly by every thought and feeling that arises. I will share a story about a mapmaker. He was commissioned to chart a vast, unknown forest. He spent years on the edge of the woods, meticulously drawing based on the reports of explorers and travelers. His maps were detailed, but they were all second-hand. He knew the idea of the forest, but not the forest itself. A profound loneliness grew in him, a loneliness for the truth of the place he documented but had never entered. Finally, he left his pens and papers behind and walked alone into the heart of the woods. At first, he was terrified. Without his maps, he was disoriented. The sounds were immediate, the smells raw, the path unseen. This was the raw feeling of loneliness, being in an unknown without a guide. But he kept walking, slowly, paying attention. He felt the moss underfoot, saw the way light filtered through specific leaves, heard the distinct calls of birds he'd only drawn. He began to make not a map for others, but a mental record of his own direct experience. His loneliness, the separation from the true source, transformed into the most profound solitude, a personal, intimate knowledge of the forest that no second-hand map could ever provide. When he emerged, he never made another map the same way. He had learned that true knowledge requires the brave, solitary step into the unmapped territory of direct experience. Our minds are full of second-hand maps. Maps of how life should be, of what happiness looks like, of what it means to be connected. These maps are drawn by society, by family, by past experiences. Loneliness arises when we find ourselves in a territory that doesn't match any of our maps. We feel lost. The practice of mindfulness is the brave act of setting aside the maps and entering the direct, unmapped territory of this present moment. What is here, right now, in your actual experience, aside from all the stories? The pure sensation of breathing. The play of light. The sound in the room. This is your forest. Knowing it directly is the end of existential loneliness. The Buddha's core teaching on the Four Noble Truths is a map for ending suffering. The first truth acknowledges the reality of dukkha, often translated as suffering, but encompassing unease, stress, and yes, the ache of loneliness. The second truth identifies the cause, craving, tanha. Craving for pleasant experiences, craving to avoid unpleasant ones, craving for things to be other than they are. Loneliness is a potent form of craving for companionship and craving to avoid the feeling of being alone. The third truth offers the promise, there is an end to this. The fourth truth is the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, which is, in essence, a training manual for cultivating a mind that is not ruled by craving. The entire path cultivates the inner solitude of a mind at peace with what is. Let's consider a new metaphor. Imagine your awareness is a wise, old shepherd, and your thoughts and feelings are a flock of sheep. Normally, the sheep scatter wildly. The sheep named loneliness runs off into dark valleys, and you, identifying with the sheep, run after it, getting lost in the brambles of sad memories and future worries. The practice of mindfulness is training the shepherd to sit on a steady rock, the rock of the present moment, and to watch the flock with a calm, kind gaze. When the sheep, loneliness, runs off, the shepherd sees it go, but does not chase it. The shepherd stays on the rock, breathing steadily. Sooner or later, the sheep, unattended, wanders back into view. You are not the panicked sheep. You are the calm shepherd. Your solitude is the unshakable rock. I remember a woman who came to the temple, a retired nurse who had spent her life caring for others. In retirement, she felt useless and acutely lonely, as if her purpose had evaporated. Her mind was a flock of anxious, grieving sheep. We began with the simplest shepherd training. Each time she made a cup of tea, she was to do nothing else. She was to feel the kettle's weight, hear the water boil, watch the steam, feel the warmth of the cup in her hands, taste the first sip. That was all. Just be the shepherd of that one simple activity. At first, her mind, the sheep, raced away constantly. But she gently brought it back, to the weight, the heat, the taste. Over weeks, this simple, solitary ritual became her rock. She reported, "I've made 10,000 cups of tea in my life, but I never tasted one until now." From that small, steadfast rock of mindful tea-making, her ability to be the shepherd grew. She stopped chasing the sheep of uselessness and loneliness. She began to sit on her rock more often, watching her flock with less panic. She found a deep, quiet contentment in her own presence that her busy, caring life had never allowed. Her solitude became her sanctuary. This is the power of mindfulness. It builds an inner structure of stability. It trains the mind to find its home in the direct experience of the present, which is always solitary, and always sufficient. When your mind is at home in the present, you are never homeless, no matter who is or isn't physically with you. Let's practice being the shepherd right now. For the next minute, let your sole task be to feel the breath moving in and out of your body. Your mind will wander, that's what sheep do. Each time you notice it has wandered, gently and without any self-criticism, guide it back to the feeling of the breath. That act of noticing and returning is the essence of the practice. You are not failing when your mind wanders. You are succeeding each time you notice and return. You are strengthening the shepherd. With each return, you are affirming, "My home is here," in this present moment sensation. As you strengthen this capacity, you begin to see that all feelings, including loneliness, are just sheep. They come, they graze, they move on. They are not you. You are the spacious awareness that contains the entire hillside, the sky above, and the steady rock upon which you sit. This is the ultimate solitude, and it is a position of unassailable peace and freedom. From this vantage point, your relationship with the world softens. You no longer need to grasp at people or experiences to quiet your restless flock. You can engage with them from a place of inner quiet, which makes the engagement richer and more authentic. You are sharing from your rock, not seeking to steal theirs. The journey from loneliness to solitude is, therefore, a journey of empowerment. It is reclaiming the authority of your own attention. It is learning that you have the ability to place your mind on what is nourishing and real, the present moment, rather than on the painful stories of lack generated by a mind lost in time. It is the realization that your greatest companion, your wisest friend, has been with you all along. It is your own mindful, compassionate awareness. We have journeyed together to this point, circling the heart of a profound truth. We've moved from the ache of loneliness to the practice of solitude, from identifying with the passing weather to resting as the steady sky. Now, let us integrate this understanding into the very fabric of our daily living. For the wisdom of Buddhism is not an abstract philosophy to be admired. It is a living path to be walked, one mindful step at a time, especially in the quiet moments when we find ourselves alone. Let me share one final, original story. There was a master bell maker, renowned for bells whose sound could cleanse the heart of anyone who heard them. His process was secret, but it was known he worked always at night, in utter solitude. An apprentice, desperate to learn the secret, once hid in the workshop. He watched as the old man, instead of frantically working the metal, would sit for hours before the silent, cooling bell. He would simply gaze at it, his hand resting lightly on its rim. The apprentice grew frustrated. This was just sitting, doing nothing. Where was the secret technique? One night, during this silent vigil, a moth flew into the dark workshop, drawn to the single candle's flame. It circled and circled until, exhausted, it landed on the great bell's lip. At the moment its fragile feet touched the metal, the bell emitted a single, pure, soft note that filled the space. It wasn't struck. It was touched into sound by a presence so light it was almost nothing. The apprentice understood. The master's secret was not in the making, but in the being with. His profound solitude, his patient, attentive presence, was what tuned the bell to such sensitivity that the touch of life itself could make it sing. The bell was his own mind, made resonant through the practice of solitary attention. This is the culmination of our exploration. Your mind, through the practice of mindful solitude, becomes like that bell. It is not silent due to absence, but resonant due to sensitivity. It is tuned to respond to the subtle touch of life, the breath, a bird's song, the play of light, with a note of peaceful acknowledgement, rather than a clang of craving or aversion. Loneliness is the belief that the bell must be struck by another to have value. Solitude is the patient tuning of the bell so that it sings in harmony with existence itself. The Buddha's ultimate teaching points to this harmonious unattachment. It is a state where you are so at home in your own being, so comfortable in the spacious awareness that you are, that the presence or absence of external conditions no longer dictates your peace. You are like the sun, which shines not because planets orbit it, but because shining is its intrinsic nature. Your intrinsic nature is awareness, compassion, and peace. Solitude is the condition that allows this nature to shine forth without obstruction. I will leave you with a personal reflection from many years of practice. There was a season of life where, due to circumstances, I lived in a remote hermitage for an extended period. The initial romance of solitude wore off quickly, replaced by a deep-seated loneliness that felt ancient, like a background hum to existence itself. I practiced, I sat, I walked, but the hum remained. One evening, in a moment of sheer surrender, I stopped trying to fix it or understand it. I simply said to the feeling, inwardly, okay. You can stay. You are part of this, too. In that moment of unconditional allowance, something broke open. The loneliness didn't vanish, but it lost its solidity. It melted into a larger, bittersweet, beautiful sense of being part of the great, aching, joyful heart of the world. I felt connected, not to specific people, but to the very human condition of sometimes feeling alone. It was a solitude so vast it included everything. I realized that the deepest solitude is not separation at all. It is the realization that you are the space in which all of life, including the feeling of loneliness, arises and plays itself out. And that space is inherently peaceful, inherently free. This is your birthright. It is not something you need to create, but something you need to stop obscuring. The habits of seeking outward, of clinging, of telling stories of lack, these are the dust on the bell. The practice of solitude, of mindful turning within, is the gentle, patient polishing. So, how do you live this? You start small. You create moments of intentional solitude every day. It could be 5 minutes of sitting with your tea, just feeling the cup. It could be a walk without headphones, feeling your feet on the ground. When you feel the tug of loneliness, see it as a reminder, my attention has wandered outward. Let me return to the breath. Let me feel the body. Let me be here. You are not battling loneliness. You are simply changing the channel of your attention from a drama of lack to a documentary of present moment reality. Remember the metaphors we've woven together. You are not the lake's surface, disturbed by every wind, you are its deep, still depths. You are not the movie on the screen, you are the screen that holds all stories. You are not the shepherd chasing sheep, you are the shepherd, steadfast on the rock. You are not the cloud of loneliness, you are the sky that holds it. You are not a flute waiting to be played, you are the hollow space that allows the music of the universe to pass through. You are not a block of wood to be carved by others, you are both the wood and the carver in loving communion. You are not a lost map reader, you are the forest itself, known through direct experience. You are a bell, being tuned by your own attentive silence to resonate with the touch of life. This is the gentle, powerful wisdom of the Buddha, offered across centuries to soothe the modern heart. It is a call to courage. The courage to be alone, to be quiet, to be still, and in that stillness, to discover an unshakable friend, a boundless home, and a peace that does not depend on a single thing in this ever-changing world. You are never truly alone. You are with the one who has been there through every joy, every sorrow, every breath, your own awake, aware, luminous presence. Cherish this solitude. Cultivate it. For in its quiet soil grows the flower of true freedom. Thank you for walking this path with me at Monk's Moon Temple. May you carry this understanding into your days and nights. May you find joy in your own company, and from that full cup, may you offer refreshment to all beings. Go in peace.